we are recapping Family Matters Season 2, Episode 19, Busted. Is that what we're doing?
That's what we're reviewing.
Yes. February 15th, 1991 is the original air date. The late, great David W. Duclon wrote this with Fred Fox Jr. As we are recording this on January 22nd, it wasn't too long ago that David unfortunately passed away, according to what his daughter said. He was suffering from some long illness. And, if you had, for those of you who listened or read Jaleel's book, you know that David was a primary figure in his time at Family Matters. He was the executive producer. He obviously was a writer, as you can indicate from this episode. I believe Jaleel confirmed that David came up with the character of Stefan Urkel. And Jaleel, I think what stood out to his tribute of David on his Instagram was him telling the story about how David was advising Jaleel that if you are going to stay as a head writer on a show for more than 4 years, that's the kiss of death. And that's exactly what David did. And Jaleel was like, at the time, he was like, well, David, why are you still here? And David was like, well, you and your talent, you make me want to come to work every day. So they clearly had a great close relationship, and we're going to see a lot of David Duclon in these episodes going forward, so rest in peace to him. And to Fred Fox Jr., who is very much alive, and I've talked to him a little bit on Instagram, and he follows us on Threads. We are going to get him on the show at some point to his pace, because unfortunately his home was affected by the LA wildfires. So shout out to Fred Fox Jr. and hope you're well. And we'll see you soon. We'll see you when you have time.
Yes, we'll see you when you have time. You guys, if you get a chance, if you go to the CaliforniaState.gov website, you can donate. Not just money, but you can find organizations that would like donations for victims of the fires.
Love that. Thank you for mentioning that. Rich Carell, I feel like it's been a while since he's directed an episode, but he has directed this one. And what a surprise. I was like, whoa, a fantastically structured episode. Seems like something that Rich Carell would direct. Our guest stars, I did not see this coming. Felicia Abel as the woman who Jaleel mentioned traumatized him when she just improvised a kiss on him. She's like 30-something years old. He's in his teens at the time, and he was crying backstage about that. We see this woman in this episode. Did you know this was the episode with the woman on it?
I didn't know it was the episode because I was like, oh, he must have had some kind of visceral reaction to this. And his reaction, wow, that's a professional. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I literally had that note. I was like, oh, the kiss just moved on quickly, and Jaleel just carried on as Steve like it was nothing. I mean, so yeah, I got to give props to Jaleel. Obviously a very traumatizing, sad situation, but wow, you put on a brave face, and no one would think at the time that you were visibly affected by the improvised kiss. Ken Kerman plays a cop. We have John Mariano guest starring as Stickman. Who is that?
It's got to be one of the people in the casino. Maybe the guy with the stick.
Oh, okay. Well, that would make sense. I was like, oh, is Stickman like a nickname for a casino employee of some sort? And no, you made it pretty simple. It's like, no, it's the guy that was carrying the stick in the casino. Okay, that makes sense. Tom Milanovich is the guard. Georgie Paul plays Mom of Mom's Bakery. And then we have the uncredited Jerry Gray as older woman in casino. There was a woman in that casino, I think it was that was right behind Steve, and she had like a really loud, bright purple kind of pantsuit outfit. Is that the woman that they're talking about?
That is, and if you have been to casinos, there's always that one woman who is dressed like that.
Now, I've only been to like our modern version of a casino where it's just casually dressed. You'll see a lot of old people, maybe someone smoking a cigarette by the slot machine and they look sketchy. I've never been in a classy, dressed up tuxedo and dress casino. Have you?
Yes, they are so much fun.
Yeah?
Yes, they have the best, like, everything. Like, you come, you sit down at the table, you look all cute, they bring you a drink as long as you're gambling, and you don't have to pay for it. It's just fun.
I thought that went away in like the 60s from those Vegas days, but they still have them today, huh?
Mm-hmm. Even in Vegas, they still have them. I mean, certain cruise ships you get on. The last one I was on was last year. It was a cruise ship, and the casino, they had like a casual dress area, And then they had a very dressy area that you could go to.
What? All right, I gotta look up that. That's awesome. I'm loving our Hulu summary. It's very short and sweet and to the point. It does not give anything away, and it still finds a way to hook you. One sentence: Steve and Eddie gambled to fund Eddie's car repairs. That's it.
It is just vague enough to make the episode interesting, but I am going to share an interesting note with y'all. I'm no longer illegally streaming the show. I'm watching it on Hulu. And Jesus Christ, are there so many commercials?
Oh, well, I mean, fortunately, I have a wife who does not tolerate any streaming plan that involves ads whatsoever. So I have the benefit of just watching ad free. But I have watched an ad supported plan on Hulu, and I do agree with you. I think every 2 or 3 minutes, especially they cut in when it's inappropriate, those ads are annoying. Yep, I agree.
They are thoroughly annoying, and I am going back to watching the show illegally. I refuse.
You don't want to pay a few extra bucks for an ad-free plan?
Why would I do that when I can just get it for free? No.
All right, let's go into the cold open. I am so... I was... how did you feel? I mean, I was just amused by Steve reading a book about antifungal cream for athletes to little Richie. Like, I was like, what is this? And for some reason, I'm enjoying it.
It was very interesting because Richie is like not grossed out, but not excited either. And they're growing over foot fungus, and then it can come back as a yeast infection on your feet, I think he said. And I'm like, oh no, this is not for me.
I mean, I guess little Richie is going to be a track star someday, and Steve is just getting him prepared. I had to write that down as my appetizer because on the list of ideas for cold opens, this would have been like further down on the list of what I thought David and Fred would have written. So shout out to them for giving me quite the unexpected. Judy in the cold open, that is always a good thing. And, you know, Steve greets her with a howdy doody Judy, which we've never gotten that before, have we?
We've never gotten that phrase from Steve before. I do love that Judy is dressed like a minion. It is the best thing ever.
Yeah, I commented like her outfit stood out to me too. I think she had a pair of roller skates over her shoulder, and she was like having this like yellow and light blue sweater, undershirt, leggings ensemble with the white sneakers. I didn't think of a minion from Despicable Me, but yeah, now that I think about it, it's like, oh yeah, there's a similar color there.
It was the best. Like, it was the cutest little outfit that she had on. I don't understand the roller skates being with it because she had shoes on. So I'm trying to figure out where she was coming from. But then I've never roller skated, so I don't know if you can wear your shoes with the roller skate.
So I believe, oh no, I mean, so with roller skates, I mean, I think she was just at a roller skating rink, and like an ice skating rink, it's an indoor thing. And maybe Judy owns a pair. She did her roller skating thing, and then you put your shoes on and you go home. You don't wear sneakers with the roller skates. No, that would be a terribly uncomfortable thing. Did you really not know that people don't wear sneakers with their roller skates?
100%. I wanted to ask if I did, because that's a weird thing to be.
Oh yeah. No. That would be terribly hot and bloated and uncomfortable for your feet. No, you just wear socks and put them in and put your feet into the roller skates just like you would put your feet into shoes. That's how it works. And I would recommend roller skating. Ice skating is terrible because it's like one blade and you could like trip and lose your balance a lot. But roller skating has the 4 wheels that maintains your balance as if you're walking. So if you're interested in roller skating, I would recommend that.
I may give it a try before my bones get too brittle, because I can only imagine I'm going to fall a million times.
All right. And then there was a moment where Steve stood up to exit in this cold open. They're in the kitchen, by the way, if we did not establish this. Mm-hmm. Were you as blown away as I was by how fucking tall Jaleel is next to Jamie?
He has had a growth spurt. Like, I was like, he looks so tall compared to her now.
Yeah. Or is it just Jamie is really short? Because, I mean, you put Jaleel next to Darius and Jaleel still looks really short.
I mean, it could be that. It could be that the pants are longer, so it looks like he's taller.
Right. Maybe. Possibly. What are your thoughts on Steve explaining that he has to go to attend the Save the Roaches meeting? And Judy is just rightfully like, oh, God, Roach is disgusting. And she's asking Steve why they need to be saved. And Steve just says that they're resourceful and can appear anywhere. And that didn't answer the question for me. Do you know more about roaches than I do? Because I was like, no, I mean, roaches are just disgusting things in the house. Like, how are they resourceful?
I mean, they can survive a nuclear blast.
There was a moment where Steve pointed to the floor as if a roach was there, and Judy was like, "Well, wait, what?" And Steve was like, "Ah, gotcha." So I guess it was a prank, right? Because
It was a prank, and Judy's scream like made me jump out of my seat because I wasn't looking up at the television. I was writing my notes at that point.
Yeah.
And when she screamed, it was so believable that I like looked up. I was like, "What happened?"
Oh man, because otherwise, I mean, I would be concerned for the Winslows. I don't know if Harriet would tolerate having a roach problem in her house.
I doubt that Harriet would even want free roaches. No.
Yeah, yeah. Once she sees one little fruit fly on a banana, Harriet goes apeshit.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then my last note, little Richie's cute laugh when he's just amused by Jamie being scared. But it was kind of a weird laugh. It was sort of an asthmatic, like he was covering his mouth and almost seeming like he was like hyperventilating.
So I have a theory on that. Either somebody else was laughing for Richie because he didn't have a believable laugh, or he's learning how to laugh.
That's true. Part of me did think like, oh, what if Brian McClure just could not let out a genuine laugh? So that was the best he had. And there you go. Because have we had a moment like this before where little Richie has laughed? I don't think so.
We have. I don't think he's laughed at all.
Yeah, he's given us a smile. He's given us his little cutesy, but no, I don't think a laugh is something that we've heard from him until now.
We're seeing his acting range. It is wide ranging. He's better than what's the guy from Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise.
What do you think about scene 1 as we get into the living room? Because I believe this is where we establish our A story of Eddie being in a pickle, just like Fast Eddie Winslow, and not the crash course. No. Mostly Fast Eddie Winslow, but there's some crash course plot in this episode as well. But we establish Eddie being in a pickle and Steve having to save him. What are your thoughts about this scene in the living room?
This is one of my first of many open mouth laughs.
Yeah.
When the scene starts and that dancing flower is in the camera, I just could not stop laughing. And Steve is snorting, "Can't touch this." It was perfect.
It was something. Now, I got to say, it at first was a nightmare to me when we opened with the shot of Steve's shock face on that flower. The audience seemed to enjoy it at first. What got me to laugh was Steve, the Steve Flower gyrating and doing the da-na-na-na-na-na-na. Once he did the "Can't Touch This" by MC Hammer, that's when I was like, okay, I'm not traumatized. I think I'm enjoying it now. I think I'm going back to my Urkel doll enjoyment of it all.
We know what traumatized you with it. Was it the fact that it was just a headless photo?
So, I think it would have been better if the scene opened with, say, Laura, who, like, this is a gift for her disgusted expression. Like, if we opened with that and then go to the flower, great. But seeing the Steve flower as the first thing I see in scene 1, it was pretty much the equivalent of waking up in my bed and the first thing I see right up in my face is Urkel's face. Like, that's what it was. That's what it felt like to me. It was just like, it was a drop shock. It was like, no. Don't need that creepiness right now. Give me some time.
You're like, eat the creepy in.
Yes, exactly. I mean, poor Laura, she's being gifted another self-centered thing from Steve. Like, what's your favorite one? Do you like the Urkel doll that Steve gave to her in the Christmas episode, or do you like the Steve flower from this episode?
The flower. I want the flower. I think that is such a cool gift to give somebody.
Yeah, because the Urkel dog just talks, but the Urkel flower, it sings and gyrates. Like, how can you not love that?
Right? Who does not want a dancing flower? And just the like shocked, scared look on Steve's face in the picture of the flower just makes me scream.
Yeah, it's quite something, and I'm curious to see what more gifts Steve gives Laura without her consent, because I think it's just going to go up and up and up from here. I think, there's a great comedic moment that comes during this when Laura struggles to find the words, and she's asking Steve, like, why didn't you give me this? And then I love how Steve matches that rhythm when he responds in his creepy, pervy way, because I love you, love you, love you.
It's so weird.
It's weird, but Jaleel is good like that. And then this is where Eddie comes in, and he's worried that his parents are around because he dented the car. Were you like me? Did you think, like, once Steve made that callback to the Crash Course episode, because Steve literally said what I was thinking. He was just like, well, geez, Edo, like a few months ago, you rammed the car through the living room, and now this? Like, how in Sam Hill did you get your license?
They wanted to throw back to that episode so many times in this episode. And I love when you break the fourth wall and you're like, yeah, this happened weeks ago. What are you doing?
Yeah. Now, I literally thought throughout this episode that they recycled plots from Crash Course and Fast Eddie Winslow and just combined it to make this one.
It's exactly what happened. It's exactly what happened. I have a theory for how this episode ended up this way, because I don't think it's how it was originally intended to go.
Oh, really?
Oh, I don't think it is, because just the theory in my head, once we get to the end, I will talk about it, but something about it just seemed off to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And going back to the Crash Course episode, I think that this outfit that Steve wears in this scene, in this episode we're talking about, the red, blue, plaid sweater, khaki, suspender getup, I think that was the same outfit that he wore in that pivotal crash scene in the Crash Course episode. And then he also used that Sam Hill expression too. David and Fred think that the audience have short-term memory, and maybe they do. I mean, maybe there are some audience members at the time in 1991 tuning into this episode, and they either forgot to tune into that Crash Course, or they're just tuning into Family Matters for the first time right now.
Can you imagine? Well, it's probably impossible for us and the listeners to imagine not knowing what happened in the previous episode, and you can't go back and rewatch it, but they keep referencing the episode. I would have been livid watching this episode.
Yeah, because at the time you would have been like, what are you talking about? Oh, okay, I guess I have to wait until their next hiatus, like 5 months from now, to maybe see a rerun.
Right?
Yeah, because that's what you have to do. Like if you don't get what's going on, you wait until a rerun hopefully comes on, and that is it.
That's it. You're lucky if you catch it at the right time, because that rerun's going to come on in the middle of the day.
Yeah. 1:00 p.m. on TBS Superstation. Oh boy. Anyway, did you also wonder what the hell was on Laura's sweater? I was seeing so tell me what you thought you saw. I saw caricatures of a Jay Leno jawed detective in an overcoat. I saw a lady that was dressed like a flapper from the 20s. I think I saw an Asian beatnik and maybe a rebellious race car driver with a cigarette. I don't know if you saw all that.
So I saw all of that, and I thought it was supposed to be the cast from Wacky Wild Races. You remember that show used to come on Saturdays?
I've never seen it.
So it's an older cartoon show, and all these different cartoon characters are racing in this race, like Dick Dastardly, Speed Racer, and a few others just from different cartoons. And it was on every Saturday. And like, you wouldn't find out to the end of the season who won this car race. And I thought it was the cast of that. And then when I looked closer, I was like, no, that's not those people. I think they're the offbeats.
Oh, we'll definitely have to look more into that. So Laura, she was saying something to Eddie about like how he's going to be dead meat. And then she gives him the Steve flower and says, here, when you're dead, put this on your headstone. And then she walks out. I just love that exit because it was a very mic drop like exit.
She did perfect. She did amazing and gave us a great foreshadowing for this episode.
And I think that's it. I don't think we see Laura at all for the rest of the episode.
Nope, Laura is not in the episode for the rest of it.
Yeah. So Eddie at this point is pleading with Steve to give him $800 cash. Does that sound about right to fix a dent in 1991?
Not to me. I think that must be a massive dent for $800.
Insane. But it's Eddie. I mean, he crashed a car through a living room, so can you imagine how big that dent is?
It's very true. We don't know what caused the dent, so maybe he's paying for other damages to people.
Probably. I love Steve's sarcastic response when Eddie is begging for the cash. Steve's just like, well, gee, Edo, if you only screwed up yesterday, like as a way to say that he doesn't have the money right now. And then there was a funny moment where Steve and Eddie they're going back and forth, and Steve is explaining how he doesn't have the money now. He says, "This morning I spent my money on a high-powered microscope. I'm dying to see what I sneeze." And Eddie was asking, "Well, can't you bring it back?" And then Steve misunderstands what he means and is like, "Nope, once it leaves the nose, it's gone for good."
I love that Steve is like, girl, stop trying to get my money. I'm focused on my snot.
Hey, look, it's his money. He has every right to do what he wants with it. And I think there was a point in time when I was a kid where I was like Steve and I was fascinated about where snot comes from, what DNA is in it. Like, I don't know, do I find out some criminal ancestry from just investigating my snot? All these questions I used to have when I was a kid.
That's a perfect thing to ask as a kid. You want to know what these things are. And some kids go all the way to find out. Some of us are just like, okay, I want to know, but I don't want to know because what if something's moving?
Yeah. Like, I don't even want to know what's moving in there. A roach?
That would be, I mean, you're dead. You're gone.
Roachy snot means the end of your life. All right, so yes, we are furthering our recycling of a Fast Eddie Winslow plot because Steve suggests to Eddie that he could get the $800 from Mom's Bakery, which is a front for an illegal gambling casino. And he knows about this place because, of course, his sketchy Uncle Cecil, always liking to border on breaking the law and whatever. Uncle Cecil used to play roulette there. And I had questions. Number one, I felt like we were kind of in the Prohibition era because in all the legalized gambling casinos that we have out there, like, is it really necessary to have an illegal gambling casino?
It totally is. Because maybe you're not gambling for money, or maybe the money you're gambling for, you don't want to pay taxes on. Mm-hmm. I would totally go to an illegal gambling casino. If anybody knows where one is, tell me.
Gotcha. So if I go to a legal casino, they're paying taxes. If I go to an illegal one, they're like, nah, fuck the IRS. We're pocketing this.
Yeah, and you're probably going to get far more fun. They're probably going to have better games.
This is true. And number two, with the likes of Steve and Uncle Cecil being aware about this casino, knowing how they're just goofy guys who could probably snitch accidentally or not accidentally, I wonder how this casino has not been found out by law enforcement yet.
It makes you wonder, but then the weirdest people, including Uncle Cecil, who we know what has a funeral service that he provides, has been very sketchy. We know that he's broken the law multiple times. This kind of just fits his character.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. So we find out that Uncle Cecil has carried the Urkel tradition of winning all the time with gambling, which is an obvious setup for Steve being in a position to be able to bail Eddie out again. And then Eddie gets so excited by the Mom's Bakery plan that he aggressively lifts Steve up by just his arm, and Steve is just like, oh. And this is probably the first of two times where Eddie is just a little physically too like hard on Steve. I'm like, I almost want to just tell Eddie, gentle, he's a little child, be delicate.
It had worse. His bones will recover.
Yeah. At the abusive hands of Herb and Diane, he's probably had worse. Yes.
You know, we never know because they are some weird.
Oh, yeah. So Eddie does the same reverse psychology thing that Steve did earlier. Yeah, because I think Steve was, kind of like, well, I have an idea, but... And, of course, that makes Eddie more curious about what Steve has an idea of. So Eddie does that same thing. Oh, Steve, we could... Nah. And I was thinking that Eddie was going to like dangle another date with Laura in front of Steve, but nah. Once again, like the Fast Eddie Winslow episode, he kind of is a dick and says like, hey, we could be best buddies if you help me out.
Now, see, this is where my theory from Fast Eddie is coming into play again.
Okay, go ahead.
Eddie is being street smart. He's like, okay, Steve, you're going to dangle something in front of me that I want. I know that you're dying for friendship, so let me dangle that in front of you to get you to help. Eddie's starting to get smarter.
I hope so, because just this season he has, been kind of making me question. God, crashing a car through the living room, not knowing how to return a screwdriver. I mean, where do we begin?
He's pushing the boundaries. Like, how far can I go? And he found out something very valuable in this episode.
All right. And funny moment from Steve. This is my last note on scene one here. On his way out the door, he sneezes loudly into his handkerchief. And in a callback that I expected from the microscope thing, he just excitedly looks at his snot and he's just like, "Man, I gotta go home and look at this."
So gross.
It's green and orange and red. Let's go.
Ugh, God. I have an extreme aversion to snot. So, like, ugh.
Look, the way you feel about snot, I felt about the Steve flower when I saw it at the beginning of scene one.
I can see that.
I am going to get so glowy about this B story at the end of it, but we begin it. We're right back in the living room. You know, what did you think about it? Because we got a relative who's dead and whose ashes need to be taken care of, and they're not taken care of very well.
I love the B story. I'm going to say that now because there's going to be a lot that I'm going to talk about at the end on why I love this so much.
Yeah.
But we start off with Rachel coming in looking super freaking cute in this all black outfit. She looks so good. I mean, the scene starts with Mama Winslow, who's cleaning out the fireplace, which is a very sketchy looking fireplace. What did you think of that?
I didn't even think of the fireplace being sketchy. I just thought, oh, it's a regular fireplace. I think I was more weirded out by the fact that Mama Winslow was cleaning a fireplace, because I just kind of felt like, oh, you're of a certain age. You're at a point where you could just like sit back, relax, and let the younger people do that. I don't know. I don't see too many grandmothers cleaning their son's house like that.
I can say I can see a grandmother cleaning out a fireplace. I can see that because she would be the one who's very meticulous, because cleaning out a fireplace is a disgusting job. It takes a lot of work.
I think if it was like something like a more of like a kitchen chore, or like, you know, cleaning around the living room, or, you know, picking up some stuff in the bedroom, like that's fine. But I don't know, there was just something about like a dirty ass fireplace. Like I could see Harriet doing that, I could see Rachel doing that, but something about a grandmother doing that, maybe it's ageism on my part, but I'm just thinking like, no, you don't got much life left in you. I don't want you breathing in those ashes.
Yes, you do. Clean that fireplace, grandmother. Your lungs are on their way out. We're not about to starve these healthy pink lungs over here.
Yeah, but go ahead. So what about the fireplace looks sketchy to you?
But it's just, how long have y'all not cleaned this fireplace? That was a lot of ash in a fireplace at home. You shouldn't have that much.
Yeah. I mean, so we have a fireplace here at our house that we never use. It's just not something that's activated well. I think I've been so used to being around fireplaces that haven't been like used, so I never really know what a really used ashy ass fireplace looks like. So I'm glad that you pointed that out. So I gotta also say that you are the first time I've ever heard somebody say, "Oh my God, this person wearing this thing that they wore at a funeral, they look so cute." Like, I've never heard of a funeral outfit being described as cute.
Okay, so probably not a popular opinion here. Funerals make people look beautiful. Like, oh my God, go to a funeral and just look at the people. Everybody is beautiful. There's something about it. I don't know what the energy is, but like Rachel's outfit was super cute. Harriet's outfit was cute. I love all black things. The only thing I would have changed is that weird head wrap that Rachel had.
Yeah, the sort of fortune tellery vibe, the wrap that she had on her head. Yep. So yeah, we've already established Harriet and Rachel. They're coming home from Aunt Clotilda's funeral. Rachel is just obnoxiously crying. Mama Winslow is walking over to them and asking in a curiously concerned way, how was the funeral? And automatically I was like, what? Because I don't know. I just feel like it's one of those things where you should know not to ask that question because it's a funeral. Like, what do you mean? How was the funeral? The funeral is usually just a big bowl of sadness. That's how it was.
I would have asked that question.
Oh, really?
I have asked people that question because I imagine a funeral. Well, I'm not even gonna say I imagine. I've experienced funerals that are fun and joyous.
You know what? And I agree with that. I do. I think I'm going on what people think first thought about a funeral. And I just feel like someone might awkwardly respond like, "Oh, the coffin looked very shiny and expensive and glorious. The food was delicious." And look, I have to say, my grandfather's funeral, since like it's a Haitian family and Haitians know how to cook, that food was the bomb. But I don't know. I just feel like when we talk about a funeral, like as like small talk, like, "Oh, how was it?" Like, I just always have this idea that people just would not ask that question because it's already assumed that it's just going to be a sad occasion. But you're right. I mean, there are happy occasion funerals. People tend to call it a celebration of life sometimes, not really so much a funeral. So, yeah, there you go.
There's always the one family member who's walking around taking pictures of everything. And like, it's just documenting the funeral. But then at small talk afterwards, they're like, it was a beautiful casket.
Yeah.
Real beautiful in there. And it's like, I get it. You're being kind, but this is kind of weird.
Right, exactly. Again, Harriet, not really reading the room lately with logical emotions. She was like, consoling Rachel as she's crying, and she's like, "Oh, Rachel, calm down." Do you tell somebody to calm down when they're crying after a funeral?
Yeah, I'm terrible with people crying. So like, if you come to me crying, I want to say like, they're there. Like, I don't know.
But
That's like
I'll
like,
take that. I'll take that.
water.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There, some more, but calm down. It's like, no, this is kind of an appropriate emotion to have after a funeral. Like, why would I calm down?
Well, now here's the other thing though, because of the next line, well, later in the scene, we find out you never met this woman, so calm down. What are you crying for? I've never understood people who cry at a funeral, and I'm like, you didn't know this person. What are you crying about?
I was going to say, Rachel reminds me of that relative, and maybe you've had this relative as well. That relative at a funeral that is so like out there with their grief, like they are just outwardly, vocally crying. They're just putting that shit into it. And you kind of wonder, like, okay, are they just a really emotional person, or is this like a sort of attention-seeking performance that they're putting on? Especially if it's someone that they don't know. Maybe they feel like, oh God, I don't know this person, but it's a funeral, so I feel like I should act like I know this person and just really cry my eyes out. Rachel had that vibe that I've seen before at funerals.
There's people who do it. Now, the last time that I experienced that of somebody doing that, I'm the type of person who walks over like, hey, have some decorum. Like, stop. Like, I need you to calm down. Like, I get that you're sad, but this, unacceptable.
Okay. And hey, you know what? Sometimes people need that talking to. So I'm glad that you were upfront with them about that. And in Rachel's drama, I wrote down a line that I loved her delivery on. Aunt Catilda will never see her again. She was here and now she's gone. Like that delivery. It was Thelma Hopkins. I mean, she knows how to put those comedic chops on Rachel. So I applaud her with what little she is given, because unfortunately she is just not given as much because of,
Yeah, but Rachel, throughout this entire episode, every time she was on camera, she made herself known. Like, she stayed in character the entire time.
Yeah. What do you think about the reason why Aunt Clotilda died? I think Harriet revealed that she died from collapsing while leading a game of Simon Says. And I had to look up Simon Says because it's been so fucking long since I played that game. If I remember correctly from Microsoft Bing, it's literally just like, oh, like I tell you to do something and I wrap it up with Simon Says and you do it. That's what it is, right?
Yeah, yes, it is.
So you clearly enjoyed that moment. Talk about it.
Laughed my ass off. I can imagine being in an old folks' home and someone is doing Simon Says and they just.
But how though? Like, because Simon Says is not the most physically like dependent game. I'm wondering, like, Jesus Christ, how hard did you guys have to work to keel over? Because not only did fucking Aunt Catilda died, her older sister, we reveal later on, fucking busted a kneecap.
They're old. Any movement is strenuous. If you say Simon Says sit down, it's Simon Says stand up.
Oh, yeah. So that alternating between sitting down and standing up, God forbid if you do that as an old person, because you might be done for.
Right. If you raise your hand too fast as an old person, you're done. If you blink too hard as an old person, you are done. You are fragile.
Yeah.
Can you just imagine her saying Simon Says, and then she just collapses to the floor so everybody else falls?
You know what? I'd be that stupid person. So like someone would say Simon Says, and then that person would drop dead, and then I'd be like, oh, Simon dead. And then like it would be inappropriate, but you know, it would be a funny thing to try to get us through the trauma of just seeing someone die from a game.
You gotta laugh. I mean, like Mama Winslow, when she heard the story, she had the reaction that I would have had. I would have open mouth laughed.
Yes, she let out a shrieky laugh. And of course, you know, she's holding it back when she thinks like it's inappropriate. But just like you, in my notes, I put down, no, Estelle, that is a pretty funny way to go out. I think that is appropriate to lie. Because, you know, especially in proceedings like funerals where it's already sad enough as it is, you're always going to have those moments where you laugh thinking about the person, or maybe you laugh thinking about how the person died. Like, I think it's okay to laugh at that.
It is. Like, I mean, honestly, when she laughed and then held back the laugh, but then let out the laugh, I was like, yes, Mama Winslow, laugh your butt off because that is hilarious.
Yeah, yeah. And then Rachel just makes it even better when she says that the paramedics got there and thought that 67 people had died. The thought of these paramedics coming by and being faced with a mass murder of senior citizens when they thought it was just only one person dead. I don't know. It was just a funny thought to me at the time.
I mean, if it's an old folks home, you don't know who's going out. So I can only imagine what they think when they arrive, like how many of them are gone.
Yeah, yeah. So Rachel made that comment because at the point in Simon Says, was everybody on the floor playing the game?
I mean, possibly they could have been on the floor. Maybe everybody just looked dead. It could have been a plethora of things.
Yeah, they're old people. They always look dead. And I was asking if Mama Winslow knew how cremation works because she was literally holding an urn that Harriet and Rachel brought in after a funeral. And she was like, huh, what is this? I just figured like, oh, Estelle, what do you think it is? Like it's on Catilda.
She thought it was like a cookie jar. You know, mother like son.
Yeah, like Carl, she thought that it was a candy jar. Well, I mean, Estelle knew that they were coming back from a funeral. It would be kind of, how many funerals do you come home with a candy jar with? I mean, is that common?
Maybe it was a gift-giving funeral. Like, you never know.
That'd be so awesome. Especially if that was like the wish of the person who died. Like, oh, hey, candy gift bags for everyone on the way out.
Yep, everybody gets a gift bag. Here you go. Boom.
There you go. There you go. Now, my question is, Rachel, and I'm assuming Harriet as well, not knowing who Aunt Catilda is, like they were not familiar with her, they weren't friendly with her, whatever. Why were they given the ashes?
I'm assuming they were her only surviving relative aside from her sister, but since their sister blew out her knee, they couldn't actually dispense of the ashes the way Clotilda wanted the ashes dispensed. Yeah, that's why I'm thinking that's the only reason.
Yeah. Cotilda, by the way. Or as Carl mentioned, I think Carl screwed up the name like a couple times later on. I loved it. Clo Bubba, Mo Floppy.
Amazing. I did think it was interesting that they decided to call this aunt the name of a slave ship. I was like, that's pretty interesting.
Cotilda is the name of a slave ship?
Yes.
Oh, I never knew that. How did you know that?
Because I watch television. I'm not even trying to be facetious when I say that. It's just National Geographic and the Learning Channel. This is the things that I learned watching TV.
God, I think we're getting some Quilts episode energy where like maybe there's like some ancestral thing that is going behind Cotilda being named Cotilda. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, more reasons to like Mama Winslow. Rachel deciding to put herself through unnecessary grief by asking Estelle if she'd rather be cremated or buried when her time comes. And Estelle just in a deadpan face is like, surprise me. And I have that energy as well. Like there are people, understandably, who have specific requests for how they want to be treated when their body is dead. And I guess my idea is like, well, you know, I'm not here. I have no control. Y'all can just decide not to do it. So yeah, you know, if you want to try to make fried chicken out of me, then sure, go ahead. I hope I taste good. I may not. How would you like to go out, Andrew? That's a question for you.
I didn't expect cannibalism to be on the list of things today. That is something that is a good, healthy surprise. Just throw me in the trash. Like, I'm not using this body anymore. Just throw it in the trash. I don't really care at all.
You don't want to be scattered across the Pacific Ocean?
No, no, that seems so complicated. And then what happens if you get spread over the ocean and you get eaten by a whale and then you're trying to whale poop? Like, who wants that?
So Carl is coming home from work, and once he looked at Aunt Clotilda's urn on top of the fireplace, I had a feeling of what would happen. He gets excited. He mistakes it for a candy jar. Laura comes downstairs to greet Carl and scares him, leading him to drop the urn into the trash as he was trying to figure out if it really was a candy jar. And now Carl dumps Aunt Clotilda's ashes into the trash can, thinking that it's just a bunch of random ash that needs to be cleaned from this new supposed candy jar. And I was wondering, as I was watching this, I was like, well, Carl, maybe you're thinking that Mama Winslow put the fireplace ashes into the candy jar and you need to clean it out. And if that's the case, then would you eat candy out of a jar that had ashes in it? Like, yeah, I mean, even if the candy jar wasn't used for candy yet, I just don't know if a great introduction to a candy jar is like, oh, hey, there's a bunch of ashes. Let me just clean it out and put candy in there. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I'm on the fence on what kind of candy it would be. If it's like a wrapped candy, I think I'm okay. If it's an unwrapped candy, not a chance.
Okay. If it's like a Mrs. Butterworth or butterscotch candy, then you're good. Because yeah, the butterscotch candies are usually wrapped.
Yeah, I mean, I love butterscotch so much. Even if it's unwrapped and it falls in someone's ashes, if it's the last one, I'm eating it.
Damn, you're an old person at heart. You're the first under 75-year-old person I've met who has said they liked butterscotch candy.
Y'all are missing out. Butterscotch is delicious.
How about when we get into scene 3 and we get into Mom's Bakery? Steve and Eddie dressed up in tuxes. They're ready to get that $800 that Eddie needs so badly to fix the dent on the car. What did you think about this opening Mom's Bakery scene?
I love the opening scene at Mom's Bakery. The guy who's at the wall, who's security, is just so perfect with his back and forth with Steve. I was like, this is fun.
It is so great. Well, first of all, again, as a guy who's only seen like dressed down casual casinos, I was just blown away by the tuxedos and dresses. I've never seen such an elegant casino ever since, I don't know, whatever 60s Vegas documentary I last saw. And logically, I would be asking myself, like, how the fuck do 2 underaged black boys get in here? Because it's just lily, rich, waspy, white casino vibes. And then I put down as my dessert, the guard. He is opening this tiny squared window and this large, what do you call these like rotating clockwise wall doors where it's like sort of like a secret password, like you get in like a bat cave kind of thing.
Let's call them Scooby-Doo walls, but I don't know what it's really called.
It's called a Scooby-Doo wall because actually I've seen these type of walls in Scooby-Doo. So the little tiny window in the Scooby-Doo wall, we see Steve's face, and you like the secret password exchange that they had? It was great, wasn't it?
It was really good. I wonder how hard they had to practice that with each other to get the timing that perfect.
It was wonderful. It made me fucking laugh. I believe it was Steve saying roses are red, and then the bouncer being like violets are blue, and then I think Steve said sugar is sweet, and then back and forth between Steve and the bouncer, but not as sweet as you. It was that specific part of it. It was wonderful. So I did write that down as my dessert. And then once Steve and Eddie get in with their fancy tuxes, we see like the side of the building that is the Mom's Bakery side. And then we see this very sweet old white lady sitting down next to Steve and Eddie with her bakery shit all around her. And it just kind of reminds me about the privilege that sweet old white ladies have, because you know, if you are that kind of person and you want to get down with some like really illegal, sketchy shit, no one's going to believe a sweet old white lady's going to do it.
They never do. Honestly, and this is probably a stereotype, but if you want to find the most illegal things, follow old white people. they are always into some illegal shit because nobody was listening.
Note taken, Andrew, because I need some money stat.
Yes. All the older white people, if you are into a scheme, tell us.
Yeah. And then my last thing for this scene was I love the joke between Steve and Eddie that is both amusing and sad. When Steve was telling Eddie, like, hey, look, keep it cool. Just pretend that we belong here, like I do in my house. Yeah. A slice of reality. The Herb and Diane household is not Steve's real household.
Okay, I'm laughing because I completely missed that joke.
I know, yeah. Yeah, sometimes these just pass by so quickly. It's hard. It's easy to not notice them. But yeah, no, it gave me a chuckle because we're seeing these hidden gems that tell us that Steve does not have a great home life, and that's probably why he is what he is, where he is in the Winslow home. And there's a Reddit thread about it too, where people are feeling bad for Steve's home life because, when you don't have parents that love you, then you got to go where you're loved or where you're supposedly loved.
You're going to find love in the streets. And Steve, come to find out about it, he's a pretty big, street shark from what we're starting to learn.
Oh, yeah. Very savvy, very savvy. Scene 4, we get back into the living room, and I think I'll just already say my main course is just I love the way we bounce between the A story and the B story and the A story. Very different from, I think, our last episode when it was like B story in the cold open, a lot of A story, and then B story smudged in the end. I don't know if it's Rich Carell or David and Fred writing this into the script, but did you notice how it was just we got a nice balance back and forth between A and B story?
Yes, we did get a nice balance here. It was a good balance. This scene is my main course.
Yeah.
And my appetizer and my
yeah, because I believe this is where Carl finds out that the ashes that he thought were just random ashes were more than that. So go ahead. What did you think about it?
Now, this is so not practical. One, Auntie was like, hey, girls, I need you to spread my ashes onto the river in Chicago or some lake. And I just wanted to know, why are y'all going out on a boat in the middle of the night to drop a dead body in water?
That does sound very like Netflix murder documentary-ish now that you think about it. So this is the reason why they're doing the cabin cruiser?
Yes.
Okay. I was confused. I thought Harriet, Mama Winslow, and Rachel were like, hey, we need a vacation from the terrible time that we had at the funeral. Let's go on this cabin cruiser. And on the way to the cabin cruiser, we'll stop by and scatter the ashes throughout the ocean. That's what I thought. I didn't think that they were on the cabin cruiser specifically to dump on Catilda's ashes. Okay.
John, that's even more diabolical.
I just thought they were making a pit stop on the way to a cabin cruiser vacation.
Diabolical.
But, hey, I wouldn't put it past the Winslows. Hey, I didn't even know what a cabin cruiser was until I looked it up online. I mean, it does say that it's a recreational motorboat with sleeping accommodations. So were they going to stay the night on this boat? Were they going to make a night or two out of it while they're dumping the ashes? Like, is that what they would do?
That would have been a better thing to do than going out in the middle of the night, dumping the ashes and coming back in the middle of the night. That'd be terrifying on a river to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Make sure nobody sees you, ladies, because someone would think something. And then, yeah, again, Carl just makes me laugh when he just fucks up Aunt Catilda's name. He was like, oh, this line, you got to go to the mortuary. How do you pronounce it? The mortuary? The mortuary?
The mortuary, yeah.
Mortuary. You got to go to the mortuary and pick up Aunt Mo Fluffy anyway. Because at the time, Carl thought that they had to pick up Catilda. He didn't know, of course, that Catilda was supposed to be in the jar that he thought was a candy jar.
He didn't know. And I love when people call things and people the wrong name. It is a golden piece of comedy that we need more in.
We do. Carl's face is the greatest, by the way, when Harriet says that they don't have to pick up Aunt Catilda because she's right here in this urn that she's holding. And then Carl realizes that he has to fix the fuck up and takes the urn away from Harriet and encourages the ladies to just, go on ahead because he just needs a private emotional moment with Aunt Clobubba. That with Aunt Clobubba.
Oh, I was open mouth laughing this entire time. Carl was so good. And the look on Harriet's face, this like, what are you talking about? Look that she held the entire scene.
Yeah.
Laughing made me scream.
I think Harriet, Rachel, and Mama Winslow all had that same look. I wrote that down. I was like, you saw this image of Carl pretending to cry as he's like holding Aunt Catilda's ashes, and then Harriet, Rachel, and Mama Winslow are just like, what the fuck is going on? You didn't know Catilda either. Like, what the fuck?
Even Rachel stops crying and is like, what are you doing? You're taking my moment.
Yeah. And then, of course, once the ladies are gone, Carl is in a panic and shovels whatever ashes he can from the trash can into the urn. I mean, I'd do the same thing, honestly, if I made that mistake. I might be naive, but fireplace ashes, real people ashes, do you think someone would know the difference?
It all looks the same, I assume.
Exactly. I would probably tell Carl, you know what? Breathe. Take your apparently very dirty, ashy fireplace. 90% of it could pass for Aunt Catilda's ashes. You're good.
Yeah. You could just dump it in there. You're good to go. You wouldn't have to say anything if you didn't want to.
Yeah. Do you think that fireplace was so dirty that they could make up another dead person and put them in an urn?
With how many ashes were in there? Yes. Oh my, that thing was full of ashes. And let's talk about the fact that Harriet left that uncleaned mess there to go out on a boat in the middle of the night. This is not real. Did you notice Carl came in too early with his line as he's getting his jacket to get out the door? So after he scoops the ashes, he bends over, he grabs his jacket, he says, oh God. But he looks off stage and kind of jumps. And then when he goes to the door, he says, oh God, and continues the line he was starting.
Oh, I didn't notice that. All right. Hey, look, even the best like Reginald VelJohnson, they might slip up every now and then. Yeah, and I would imagine that it was a small enough slip up where either Rich or whoever else was on the production staff was just like, man, let's just keep on going. It's fine. Because I mean, Rich is a grown up. He's a professional. He probably found a way to just keep it going and make it seem like it's not a mistake.
He made it smooth. It was a smooth transition. I wouldn't have picked up on it if I wasn't like rewinding and like, what just happened there?
Yeah. All right, we go into part 2 of Mom's Bakery, scene 5. What are your thoughts about this one as we open with Eddie just getting impatient with Steve because they haven't played a goddamn game yet? And Steve gave him the impression that he was a master at gambling, but Steve, of course, is just like, well, no. Like other Urkels have a sixth sense at gambling, but I don't, even though that's a continuity issue because we just saw Steve like play pool really well in the Fast Eddie Winslow episode to bail Eddie out.
What? Yeah, this scene here is where the show went from Family Matters again to Urkel. Like, This was just like, okay, we're getting full on Urkel for a scene here. They're like trying to figure out, and Steve's waiting for his mojo to kick in.
Yeah.
And then they go over to that one slot machine and the mojo started. And I'm like, okay, we're going to have some fun here.
Yeah. Did you love how Steve needed to take off his glasses and have his glasses like do a hard pivot? His glasses had to lead the way, like the blind leading the blind, to the slot machine. And his glasses should have broken when he slammed up against that slot machine because, like, the handles of his glasses, they were pushed up against the slot machine as they led him there. But luckily, his glasses survived.
He had industrial strength glasses. Those glasses weren't going anywhere. But what's funny is what he did is what a lot of people will do going into casinos who have rituals before they gamble. Is I was like, okay, Steve, you've done this before.
Right. Now, Eddie, of course, he has beginner's luck. He hits the jackpot on the first slot machine try. And then we just get a quick cut. I'm not even going to consider this another scene. We just get a quick cut to Steve playing that. Is that poker? That table game with the dice and the chips?
That's craps.
Craps. There you go. Steve is playing craps. He's rolling the dice. He's singing. He's feeling confident. He's singing a wonderful song to work himself up before he shoots the dice. I got the first line of that song. Mama's in the parlor, daddy's in the den, little baby Susan is spitting up again. And then like after each like few lines, like Steve rolls his arm back as if he's about to shoot the dice, but then before he does, he just keeps on singing. And then, of course, it gets to a point where the crowd around him is fed up and they're just like, shoot, at the same time.
Get it done. The rest of us are playing.
Yeah. And then Steve has a win with the dice roll that he pulled out, and Eddie and the rest of the crowd are celebrating. Again, Eddie, keep it easy on Steve. This is the second time, because Eddie is like jumping up and down with his hands pressed on Steve's shoulders as he's jumping up and down. And then you see Steve getting uncomfortably pushed down onto the floor by Eddie's strength.
It's the best. Their physical comedy with each other is the best.
Yeah. And holy shit, this is where the infamous kiss comes in. Now, can you walk me through your reaction when you saw it?
When I saw it, I was like, oh, that's a lot of lipstick left on Steve's face. This feels very weird.
Yeah. Now, would you still feel that way had Jaleel not told that story in his book?
Had Jaleel not told the story, I think I would have felt the same way about the way that like weird smear of wetness was on his face. That just made me feel uncomfortable. But as far as the inappropriate side of it, I would have thought this was just acting. I would have thought she really kissed him.
Right. Yeah, so the adult woman right next to Steve celebrating his win with a big smoocheroonie on the mouth. And as we talked about in the beginning, before we started this recap, Bill just carries on as Steve and just seems like, whoa, teenager on the verge of puberty who's like, oh my God, a beautiful older woman just kissed me. This is the greatest thing in the world. Like, you would never think that Jaleel was traumatized by that. So I was definitely impressed by that acting performance. And then eventually it's revealed that Steve and Eddie won a lot more than they came for. How did we go from seeking to win $800 to winning $32,000?
I mean, if you let a bet ride and that just keeps multiplying that bet and you keep winning, you'll make a lot of money before you know it. I just wish Eddie would have pocketed $1,000 of those chips and cashed it out and then just played with the rest of the money.
Okay. I look, I have no idea how gambling smarts work. What I do know is that this casino is in deep trouble because I'm like, Jesus Christ. I mean, these are minors, underage minors. I mean, they're legally not allowed to win this much money. So the fact that they have this and they're underage, like, I just knew this casino was bracing for something. And did you find it interesting how Eddie was the one that was like, okay, yeah, thanks crowd for supporting me and Steve. We're going to go with our 32 grand. But Steve was just like, no, Eddie, like, we're going to stay. Like, I thought it would be the other way around where Steve would be the more reasonable one to say, let's cut it off after 32 grand.
This is where we get Eddie walking into his street smarts. He's like, no, Steve, we've already got the bag. It's time to leave. Steve is the fresh person from the block who got it hyped up on the adrenaline and lost all sense of stability.
Right. That is an interesting switcheroo that David and Fred decided to do with the script. And the casino gets raided by the cops. There you go. Just as Steve was like on a high and trying to win more money, they're done. So they're busted, and we get back into the living room to continue our pretty entertaining B story. Carl, Harriet, a still crying Rachel, Mama Winslow, they come back from scattering what the ladies think is Aunt Clotilda's ashes. What did you think about this scene as we get into the confession?
Best scene of the episode.
Yeah.
It is the best. Oh my God, I just scream laughing. When Carl finally comes clean to Harriet and he makes the golden joke of the episode, we can throw the whole bag in. Or did it Harriet? I don't know who said it. I screamed.
It was Carl. It was like, yeah. No, so when he said we could throw the whole bag in, like old bag, like the nickname for an old person, or just
he said the whole bag. He said we could throw the whole bag, referring to the whole bag of garbage. Just get in a boat and throw it overboard.
Yeah, like the thing with the like they did like they did sketchily with the ashes. Just go on a boat and just throw it out like it's a crime scene they're trying to get rid of. It's just, oh boy. All right, so yeah, I love Carl trying to lighten up the tension of the confession he's about to make. He uses that baby voice to Harriet, like, "Ooh, Harriet, sweetheart, honey bunch." And then Carl nervously admits to Harriet that not all of Aunt Clotilda's ashes are scattered, and Harriet is like, "Well, whose ashes were they?" And This was a line that I loved. Carl is like, Aunt Presto Logs.
No,
I had to look up what Presto Logs was. It's part of like I think it's like part of the Duraflame brand. Again, I don't use fireplaces. I know, I'm so naive. I don't use fireplaces.
no, thinking about the joke.
Oh, it is a great joke. Yeah, Aunt Presto Logs. Oh my God. And I fucking laughed. This was my dessert. Another one when Carl says he feels bad and wants to make it up to Harriet, and Harriet's just dumbfounded, like, how? And I was like, right with Harriet. I was like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, what are you going to do, Carl? You're going to kill your mother and make sure that 100% of her ashes are taken care of and scattered across the. Like, how do you make up for this?
Sorry, gets to my favorite joke.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my God, it's great. It's great. Um, that's all I had for that scene. I mean, do you have anything else? Because it only gets better from here with that B story.
Oh my God, this was just amazing. Carl's just his timidness with Harriet, but then his way to break the ice with like, hey, we can just throw everything overboard and we can guarantee that she is in the water.
Yeah,
He's just focused on getting the task done, and that is what makes it so funny to me.
yeah. We can throw the old bag. We can move on. We can act like nothing happened. Oh my God, love it, love it. All right, we get into scene 7, and were you like me? Did you think that the next scene was going to be? No, actually. Oh, yeah. Part of the reason why this main course is so beautiful, we sort of wrap up the B story, and then I don't know if this was David and Fred or David, Fred, and Rich choice. I think this is the first time I've seen the B story kind of link up with the A story. A phone call comes in, Carl picks it up, and then of course he's flabbergasted. He reports to Harriet that like, oh, Eddie is in jail for gambling. I've never seen that before. Usually the A and the B story are pretty separate, but this is the nice thread that they put there.
It was a nice little combination to kind of wrap up the B story, but still leave enough in there where we can have fun with it. And the next scene, which how many freaking scenes does this have?
I wrote down 7.
Okay, I have 9. But it's because those fade in, fade out things, and I'm like, what in the world?
Yeah. You're probably talking about like the sort of like jump cut from one part of the Mom's Bakery moment to another. But I have this down as our final scene.
Okay, good.
Yeah, got it. I towards the end, I just put down fucking yes, fucking yes, fucking yes. It's such a great way to wrap up the show. But yeah, we get into the kitchen. Instead of seeing Carl bail Eddie and Steve out of jail, we're already at the aftermath of it, where Carl is about to lecture Eddie on what the fuck he did and how he's going to be punished. What do you think about this scene?
I think this was a good way to wrap everything up. So happy. It is in bold letter in my notes that Steve is not in the scene. Thank you.
This
was an expert way to do that.
Yeah, he could have been, but no, they found a way to not use him and make it very entertaining. And I thought it was something. All right, so Carl, his vibe is all right. So let me get this straight. Edward has his intimidating father tone. You put the dent on the car, and instead of coming clean about it, you decided to gamble. And then I was thinking to myself, Eddie, the man has a point. You crashed the car through the living room. By comparison, a dent, you could have told him that, and I think Carl would have been a lot more even-keeled about it.
I can see that. I wouldn't have told Carl because Carl has had a history of overreact.
Even with a dent after like seeing a car crash through the living room?
Yeah, I'd be like, no. The way you reacted about that screwdriver, Carl, I don't know what you've been holding on to that you're going to unleash on me.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, so Carl does his let me get this straight lecture. He has Eddie take a seat. He's grabbing Eddie's beautiful hair by his fist. And Eddie has such a great haircut in this episode. I was just like, don't do that, Carl. Don't do that.
You're like, don't mess up the girls.
Yeah, but I do admire Carl's remarkable patience as a father. He has a lot of patience towards Eddie. At this point, with Eddie's fuck-ups, and of course he, says that Eddie is grounded for 3 weeks. He's ashamed. Eddie is not allowed to use the car until the car learns self-defense. Yet I feel like Eddie has had this kind of punishment before and he still fucks up. So I think I'm kind of getting what you're saying more and more. where it's good to question like how effective Carl's fathering is. Like maybe there's like an adjustment you need to make. Not saying that you need to like fucking all out spank the boy, but you could be patient. That's great. But maybe there's a such thing as being too patient. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Like the car reaction of the car going through the house, understandable.
Yeah.
The action matches the excitement that you feel. Eddie losing a screwdriver, we're like way off here. There's like
Right.
a huge imbalance of the reaction does not match what happened. But your child going to an illegal gambling den with shifty people who could have killed him at any moment for that $32,000 that he won in front of everybody. You're just like, oh, you're grounded.
Yeah. Yeah. He's treating it as if like Eddie stayed out late or had sex in his room without a condom. Like, it's like, no, he did a pretty adult illegal thing.
Yes. Yeah. If you were old enough, this would have been a felony.
Oh my God. But anyway, I wrote down that it's a dessert from here on out. So Eddie goes upstairs after he's gotten his punishment. I fucking laughed because Harriet does the same let me get this straight lecture to Carl. And this was in regards to Aunt Catilla's ashes in the trash, of course. And I just love Harriet giving Carl a taste of his own medicine, because if you think about it, like, and for some reason I didn't think about it until this moment. I was like, oh yeah, Carl did the same thing Eddie did. He just, instead of admitting outright to a mistake up front, he was trying to cover it up and then look at where it got him. But yeah, it was a great story device. And Harriet pulls out the chair just like Carl did with Eddie, asks Carl to sit down, and the audience may not be laughing as hard as I did at that moment, but I was loving it. I said yes, yes, yes in my notes, because in a callback to Carl pulling Eddie's hair, like, you little rascal, I'm going to teach you a lesson. Remember when Harriet pulled Carl's hair, and before she did, she just had that look of like, oh, I don't think there's much to pull here. It's like she was kind of like pulling air for a second.
She looked at him. She's like, you bald baby. The look on her face was too priceless.
God, it made me laugh out loud so much. There's not a lot of times where I approve of the wife treating the husband like a misbehaved child stereotype, but this is the moment where I approve it. And Harriet's punishment to Carl for not owning up to his mistake up front is taking her out to dinner to Chez Josephine. I found it very amusing that Carl was just like, okay, yes, ma'am. As if it's a punishment to treat your wife.
Amy, for a straight man back then, it could have been.
I mean, look, I guess if we're going on the stereotype of like, oh, all marriages are awful, then sure, but maybe coming from a place where my marriage is going well, it's just like, oh, no. I mean, every now and then it's nice to take your significant other out to eat.
I feel like that it was really like Carl's, like, I said like so many times, Jesus Christ, Carl is, I'm going to have to pay for this dinner. And Harriet's going to get the most expensive stuff. That's why it's a punishment.
Okay. Gotcha. But then, of course, we go to the sex-hungry man stereotype where Harriet, after she's done stating the punishment, she's like, all right, now let's go hit the sack. And then Carl is happily like, yes, ma'am. And then there you go. They they leave, they kiss each other, and credits roll.
It's that funeral energy. It makes you want to fuck.
Yeah. That sketchy throwing ashes over the ocean energy.
We just disposed of a body in the middle of the night.
Honestly, I'm not even going to lie. Think of how many sexual moments have happened from people who have just like secretly committed a crime together. I can bet you so many people have like disposed of a body in the ocean, like, and they've been turned on by it and fucked each other afterward, because there is a sort of aphrodisiac to doing something really bad and maybe getting caught, but not quite getting caught. Like that I could see a lot of people getting it on after that.
Yeah, I mean, after every crime I've committed, I've had some great sex.
Yeah, exactly. Anything else for that closing scene?
That is it. It was a great way to close the episode.
Yeah. So what's your delicious star rating?
So this episode is a 1.5 for me.
Wow. Yeah, lower than I thought.
I didn't like the A story. I just actually didn't care for it as much. The B story is what carried this episode for me. So it's like one half of the episode for me was fun jokes and I didn't care about the story. The other half was amazing jokes and the story was good. So I really like our funeral story, spreading the ashes, everything with that I thought was funny. Carl, Harriet, and Rachel together on screen, they are gold. And I feel like we finally got back to Family Matters.
Yeah.
Like, after all the craziness of Urkel coming in, it's been like, ooh, okay, whirlwind, 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 whirlwind. And this time it was like, okay, this is actually a very reasonable scenario. This could actually happen. And we got a majority of our comedy from the family. And that's what made me happy.
Yeah, I think we're still in that part of Family Matters history where it is like you see those uh glimmers of Urkel taking over the show, but it's not quite 100% yet. Like you'll still see glimmers of what Family Matters used to be with a focus on the Winslows. So I'm liking that show right now, I think primarily because of that. If we are still recapping seasons going forward where it does seem to be more like the Urkel show, then we'll see how we feel about that. But at least from Reddit conversations that I've joined, good thing about season 2 is that you get a nice balance. Yes, Urkel starts to creep up and take over, but he hasn't quite taken over yet fully. Like, it's still a nice dose of Winslow here and there. So I appreciate that. I'm going to give this a 2.9 out of 3 stars because really, I mean, the only thing that would keep it from a solid 3 is the fact that it's a mixture of Fast Eddie Winslow and Crash Course. I mean, I know when you're doing a sitcom every week, you're writing, you're producing it, like sometimes you have to recycle shit and hope that the audience has short-term memory and doesn't remember. But we remember.
We remember, and if you're gonna remix something, don't reference it in the show.
Yeah. Other than the Crash Course and Fast Eddie Winslow recycled plots, I thought it was a fantastically structured episode. Again, A story, B story, A story, B story. David, Fred, Rich, good going on that. We got comedic strengths from a majority of the cast, like Steve, of course, with his nerdy confidence at Mom's Bakery, and with the dancing, seeing Steve flower. That was wonderful. How Carl reacts to doing something extremely clumsy and then trying to hide it. Reginald knows how to sell that well comedically. Mama Winslow's deadpan lines and reactions are always great, even though they were very little in this episode. And Rachel exaggerates like a motherfucker. I love it. Anytime she just goes on something dramatic and plays it for comedic effect, great. She did that well with the funeral shit. Harriet putting on the talking down to motherly wife vibe to Carl. Love that as well. Yeah, just lots of strong comedic moments from a good chunk of the cast that carried this episode well for me. I had some good laughs. I enjoyed it. I didn't even have any junk food. I don't know if you had junk food for this episode.
I don't think I had any junk food. If I were to call anything junk food, it's just the mixing of those 2 previously used stories.
Yeah,
that would be the only thing, but everything else was good. It's just I wanted a little more rich.
Yeah, I agree. It was funny because like you glitched when you said that, so it was like, I want another more originality. Like it almost seemed like you were self-destructing.
I love it.
Like you were drunk almost.
You know what? That's a good way. If I can be drunk and pixelated, what?
All right. Anyway, we might as well wrap this up before the internet gets worse on us. All right. So, present and future Delicious, listen, subscribe, follow, rate, review The Delicious Recap wherever you get podcasts. The Delicious Recap at gmail.com is where you could send questions, comments, concerns, feedback. The Delicious Recap at gmail.com. As far as I know, we are still on all the socials. Yeah, if you search The Delicious Recap, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Reddit. As of when we're recording this, we're on TikTok. We were briefly not because of the ban, but now we're back. We may not be again. So enjoy that game with us.
Mm-hmm. In 90 days, we'll know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and again, if you will want access early to episode recaps like this, special interviews that we have from time to time, patreon.com/delicious recap, just $5 a month, patreon.com/delicious recap. Andrew, where can people follow you? And what I mean by that is, where are they allowed to follow you as per our government?
You are allowed to follow me on TikTok, Note, and YouTube. Those are the places you can find me that I'm most active. Just search Vandertunt. That's all you got to do. It's like one of the funnest words you could ever say. I want to pay Donald Trump to say my name. I'm not gonna. I just want to hear how it's going to sound. Like, I feel like it would be fun. But you can follow me there, interact with the show. If TikTok gets canceled completely, the Delicious Recap will be available on Red Note, and you won't have to learn Chinese to understand. That deliciousness will reign.